So, welcome to the podcast, Lindsay.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you as a fellow person who's left the accounting industry. It lights my heart up when I see people getting out and doing what they truly love. But I have to know in this moment
Mhm.
right now, what's that thing that's lighting you up the most?
That's a good question. I feel like right now it's podcasting, honestly. I have my own podcast. Obviously, I've booked a lot of guest interviews on other people's podcasts, and I've just been loving being in this space and reaching new audiences and just being able to share my story and my journey and what I've learned and how I can help other women who are on their own entrepreneurial journey is what lights me up right now the most.
Just because you said podcasting and podcasting is my love language, what do you
Yeah.
think is different by sharing your story via podcasting versus like social media or something like that?
I think for one, you're able to go a lot deeper. Like, no one's going to really sit there for 20 minutes and watch an Instagram video. But I think people will. I mean, at least I listen to, I listen to an hour-long podcast pretty much every morning. So I think you're able to go a lot deeper. And it's just a different way that you can connect with your audience, because I think on a podcast that's something that people are like integrating into their daily life. It's like on their commute to work, they're listening to you, and you, especially if you're putting out a podcast episodes regularly, like I don't know about you, but the podcasts that I listen to regularly, I feel like I know like I feel like they're my best friends, and I'm like every Wednesday I'm looking forward to that episode. And like if it's late or if they're taking a break for 1 week, I'm like devastated. So I think it's just another level that you can really go deeper. And social media is so, I don't know, I guess crowded and so kind of saturated in a way that like when someone's listening to your podcast, that's the only thing that they're listening to. They're not getting distracted by all these other notifications going on, right? So I just think it's such a great medium to be able to share your voice and share your story and really connect on a new level with your audience.
Oh, so how long have you been podcasting for? And what's your podcast name? Because we all want to know now.
Yes, my podcast is called Quit Your Job, Sis, and I've had it since I launched January 2020, so a little bit over 2 years now.
Hey, I launched in February of 2020. It was like perfect
Really?
timing. I love that. So quit your job, sis. You got to have a story behind the name. Can we know a little bit about the
Oh,
backstory?
it's the funniest, most non-story. So the thing is, I knew that I'm the type of person where I don't feel like I'm creative, and I'm like, I'm gonna dwell on what to name my podcast for 7 years if I let myself do that. So I'm not gonna let myself do that. And I'm just gonna go with the first name that popped into my head. And that was the first name that popped into my head. And I was like, that feels pretty on brand for me. I can always change it down the line if I want to, but like we're going with it. And here we are. I'm so glad that I chose that name. It is very on brand. So many people tell me that they love it. And it's also turns out to be really good for SEO because lots of people are searching quit your job. So it ended up being the perfect name, but there was really no strategy behind it at all.
But you had a story about quitting your job and leaning into
Well, yes,
something that
that
was fulfilling.
that's a whole other story. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I was an accountant. I went to school for accounting. I got my master's degree, I got my CPA license, everything. I started my career and pretty much from day one, hated it. And so, throughout that first year, it was kind of that struggle between, all right, well, I just got a whole degree in this. I just spent 5 years studying for this. It's a stable career path, it's good money, and what the heck else would I do instead, right? But then at about that year mark into my career, I had kind of my quarter life crisis moment of like, if I stay here and do this for another 40 years, what is my life going to look like? And I knew that I wasn't going to be happy. I wasn't going to feel fulfilled. And I was going to look back and like wish that I had tried something else. And so that was the moment where I decided I was going to make a change, and I was going to explore what else is out there. And so that's kind of the long story short of how I ended up diving into online business worlds.
And what did you jump out of accounting to do first off? Like, what was your first jump?
Yeah. So my first jump, interestingly enough, was fitness coaching. So that's what I initially started doing in my business. I was really passionate about fitness at the time. I had kind of been on my own fitness journey for a few years, and I really felt like that's something that would be super fulfilling for me, helping people along their fitness journey. And it definitely was. So I enrolled in a program to get my personal training certification while I was still working full time in my accounting job. And then I left that job, I got my certification, and I launched my first program, online fitness coaching program, January of 2019.
That's amazing. You just went for it. You're like, I'm just switching. And that's a
Yeah.
huge shift.
Yeah,
I
it
love, I love
definitely
that.
was, and that's definitely the short version of it. There was a lot of struggling in my mind of like, is that really realistic? Like, can I actually just start an online business? Like, I've never even trained anyone in person. And so it took a few months for me to get to a point of like, you know what, I know this is what I want to do. I see other people doing this, so it is possible, and I'm just going to go for it. Like, what really is the worst case scenario? But yeah, I mean, it was a scary and very big decision to make for sure.
So what kind of roadblocks did you come other than the fear when you decided, okay, you went from accounting, now you're in
Hmm.
fitness, and I know that's not where you've stopped. So what kind
Correct.
of kept pushing you to become, I'm not going to spill the tea yet, I'll let you do
Hmm.
that, but become the person that you're doing now with, like your podcast, Quit Your Job, Sis,
Yeah.
I mean, aligns perfectly with what you're doing.
Yeah. So now my business has evolved over the past 3.5 years. And I'm doing business coaching, social media management, kind of like freelance marketing work, as well as my podcast. And so it was kind of a little less than a year into when I started, which really isn't that long at all. And I was starting to feel like, I kind of don't want to be doing fitness coaching anymore. And that was super scary for me because I was like, I just quit my whole job and started this business thinking that this is something that I was going to want to do. And now I'm not even a year into it. And I'm feeling the same way that I was feeling in my job pretty much about fitness coaching. Like, what am I going to do? And I think that's where really this idea of like working in alignment, having that underlying like love and trust for yourself was so huge for me because I had to honor that feeling. Like, I could not just ignore it and keep going. And one of the blocks that I came up against was it was getting really hard for me to sign more fitness coaching clients. Like, I was getting on calls with people, but I just kept hearing no, it's not the right time, it's not the right fit, whatever. And I started to really struggle with that the last couple months that I was doing fitness coaching because I didn't actually want to be doing fitness coaching anymore. Right. And so that's why I was like, okay, it's time for me to move into something else. And I need to be really honest with myself about what that is. And that first evolution was life coaching. Like, I was like, I want to help women on a deeper level, and I want to help women who are feeling stuck in their career like I was and want to be doing something different and maybe want to start an online business, and they're struggling with all those fears and doubts of whether they can really do that. Is it realistic? What do I even want to do? Um, and so that's what I started doing. And that was kind of the same time where I launched my podcast. So yeah, I mean, it evolved from fitness to life coaching. And then most of my clients ended up, wanting to start an online business. So it kind of just naturally turned into business coaching. Um, but it's always a process of looking internally and checking in with myself of like, am I doing something that lights me up? Is there something that I'm feeling called into that I'm not doing, and kind of following that? And I just feel like what I've learned about myself is that I'm not meant to do one thing for my whole career. And I pretty much get bored right around the 1 year mark every time, which is fine. I haven't got bored with my podcast yet though. So I think it's a constant evolution and a process of loving myself through it and really following those pulls of what I feel called to do. But there's definitely fear and doubt come up at every new level and every iteration of my business for sure. I don't even remember what your question was or if that answered it, but
It did. And I think that it's sharing like with the listener and, just with me, it's okay to pivot and lean in and listen.
mm-hmm.
I am just like you. I have been through, I don't know, 10 different things. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been everything from like an art coach to chronic pain coach. And now I'm like podcast producing and
Mm-hmm.
strategist. And it does evolve. And it seems that if you don't force, it comes up. It just
Yes.
kind of evolves into it. So I think that sharing that story is so important to hear, listeners, is that it is okay if it doesn't feel aligned to pivot. You don't have to be stuck forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
So, now that you've evolved into this and like podcasting is the best, you probably won't ever get rid
Mm-hmm.
of that. I'm so excited that you stuck
No,
with
I
it.
don't
But
think
like you
so.
said, is that it's a way to connect with people on a deeper level. It is
Mm-hmm.
a special way to connect. And I think that that's so cool that you started your business and then immediately started a podcast around it. It's just
Yeah.
the alignment and the excitement is just I love that when people get like podcasting, you can tell is my love. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, that word alignment really stands out to me because that's really what it was. Like I didn't start a podcast as a business decision. I didn't start it thinking, oh, this is going to be a great way to promote my business or get more clients. It was like I had the idea of starting a podcast for a while because podcasts were such an important part of my journey. Um, Especially during that time where I was thinking about quitting my job and I was finding podcasts from life coaches or business coaches or people who had, entrepreneurs who had started an online business. And that was huge for me to know that like I wasn't alone and somebody else has been through this and felt these same fears and these same doubts. And so I think part of it was I wanted to kind of become that for other women, but I think mostly it was like I really want to have a podcast. Like I just kind of always wanted to have one. And it has definitely turned into that podcast for a lot of women who feel very validated by it, and that's amazing. And the messages that I get from my listeners are incredible. But that it's just the biggest example that I have, even down to like the title of it, right? Like I mentioned, where it was just such an aligned action that I took from a place of like not wanting anything out of it, not having necessarily a goal with it. It was just, I'm feeling called to do this thing. And so I'm going to do it. And now it's turned into a great aspect of my business. A lot of my clients come straight from my podcast. And it's turned into its own kind of income stream in a lot of ways too, which is cool to see. But it's just such a perfect example of like following your heart, following your intuition, taking those aligned steps, and just kind of knowing that the pieces are going to come together. You don't necessarily have to see the whole puzzle right now.
oh yes, allowing it to come out. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's waiting for that aligned. You had the urge and then at the moment that it was right, you just went for it. And you went for
Yeah.
it from a place of your heart, not from your bank account. And that I think
Yes.
that is magical. And that's where that abundance just easily flows back in. You see so many people out there like, I just sat down and all this money came flowing to me. And you're like, yeah, right. And then
Yeah.
as you grow in your own business, for me at least, I realized that the more I allowed to be aligned and in flow,
Mm-hmm.
it really was that easy.
Yeah, no, every single time. Like I feel like for me, every time I've tried to do something from a business mindset kind of, I kind of think of it from like a masculine mindset almost of like strategy and here's the end goal. let's backtrack all the steps to get there and execute on the strategy, like it almost never works. But every step that I've taken that was really just from a place of like, I'm feeling called to do this thing, or I really want to create this piece of content, or write this email, or reach out to this person, it ended up happening in just such an easy and flowy and beautiful way that I never really could have expected. And that's always the moments where I find the most aligned clients, or I'm, months where I make the most money, or just really moves that end up being smart business moves, but they didn't start from a place of trying to be a smart business move. It was just really being in alignment with myself and in tune with what I want to create, and kind of that feminine energy. And that's always where I see like the fastest and the easiest growth in my business, like every single time.
Oh, I'm just like, my heart is so happy just for saying that. Is it does. And the strategy can be your own. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. I know a lot of my listeners out there, because we're, women entrepreneurs, we see all these strategies. Oh, make $100,000, do
Yeah.
this or whatever it is, the 1 million, whatever. And you feel like you have to do it that way. And I spent
Mm-hmm.
4 years in those patterns. And then finally I
Yeah.
was just like, I'm done. I wiped my hands of it. I went to
Yep.
Costa Rica and I came back and I was like, no more strategy. Let's just see what happens. And that month was my biggest month ever. And I didn't have to talk to anybody. They just came to me. It was
I
crazy.
love
So that
it.
aligned, inspired action is so important.
Yeah, I think that's so huge whenever you find yourself saying, "Oh, I should do that." And it's so easy. Even literally, this happened to me yesterday. And it happens a lot. So, because on my podcast, I interview a lot of other entrepreneurs and experts. And so, a lot of times after the interview, like they'll be talking about some strategy that really worked for them, or, and then I'll kind of internalize that and be like, wait, should I be doing that? Like, am I not doing enough in my business? And I get really in my head. And then I'm like, no. What you're doing is working. You don't have to do it just because it worked for somebody else. And you get to do things in your own way, and that's actually the best and most effective way for your business, right? So it always comes back to having that trust with yourself, that the things that you kind of naturally feel called to do are enough. And I just see so much evidence of that in my business. But even with all that evidence, I still kind of get stuck there sometimes and have to bring myself back to trusting myself, really.
How do you bring yourself back? Because I know for me, I'm going to raise my
Mm-hmm.
hand. I'm one of those people that has like a hard time coming back because I have to spend so much time on social media for my clients.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think again, it kind of just goes back to that idea of like, I can trust myself. Like literally yesterday after I got off that interview, I had to like keep repeating that to myself over and over again until I kind of got back to that sense of peace of like, I'm doing enough. And I think kind of going through that mental list, or even getting out your journal if you need to, and listing out like, what's all the evidence that I have of, the things that I'm doing are working, right? What's all the evidence I have of when things have been easy in my business, and what did I do to get there? Was it that I was using a strategy, or was it that I just took this inspired and aligned action? And for me, it's always the second one, right? And also thinking about how it feels, right? Because when I'm in that place of, oh, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? It feels very confusing and very overwhelming and stressful, and like just this constant energy of like, I'm not doing enough. And so when I'm in alignment, it's a very different energy where it feels like there's nothing else I need to do. It's like, I know that what I'm doing is enough. And it's not that I'm doing nothing, but it's like I'm taking actions that feel good for me, and not from a place of I have to do this or I should do this. It's like, ooh, I want to do this. And so that's kind of a check for myself of how do I know whether I'm taking action from a place of alignment or not.
Oh, and the awareness that you're checking in
Mm-hmm.
is key.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's something that I honestly do daily at this point. And I think because it's so easy to get out of that place if you're not doing those checks with yourself, and really looking at, okay, even if it's like at the end of the week, and looking back, like, what are all the things I did this week and how did I feel while I was doing them? Because if you are working from a place of alignment, you're not going to feel stressed. You're not going to feel burned out. I mean, you might feel stressed, but like, you're not going to be exhausted by the things that you're doing. You're not going to feel burned out by them. You're not going to feel like you're spinning your wheels and putting in all this effort and not getting anything in return. And if that's how you're feeling week to week, then there's, something there that's out of alignment. And that's time to really look at what that is. And maybe why do you not trust yourself, or why do you not feel like the things that you want to do are enough?
Yeah. And that for me was the time that I reached out and got support,
Yeah.
because that's hard
Yeah.
to go through by yourself.
Definitely. I think I'm at a point where I'm really good at kind of self-coaching and being very self-aware, but it definitely helps to have coaches throughout my journey for sure, because I don't know how I would have had this level of self-awareness without having coaches and mentors along the way. And even just people, like, even now sometimes, like, I'll call my best friend and be like, I'm having a moment. I need to just talk through it with you. Right. So having another sounding board can definitely be helpful as well.
Oh, yeah. And you're providing that for your clients, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's so much of coaching. Like when you think business coaching, it's funny because I feel like it's like 70% mindset and like maybe 30% strategy. But usually, once you get that mindset piece and once you really are in alignment, right? Like your offer is in alignment. It's something that you want to create. Your ideal clients, you really believe that they're out there and that they want to work with you and they're ready to work with you, and that the content you create is going to be enough to bring them in. It all just gets a lot easier, and you almost don't need that strategy piece because opportunities just start coming out of nowhere. And it's like, I can't really explain it, but it happens with every single one of my clients and my own and myself. So I just know at this point that like your mindset and your energy is like 90% of the puzzle.
And that all goes back to that self-trust piece you were talking about. Like you
Yeah.
have to trust in yourself, because if you
Hmm.
don't trust in yourself, no one else will.
Well, that, but I also think, if you don't have that trust in yourself, then you're going to keep looking outside of yourself for the answers. And you're going to think, I don't, and it's so easy to do in the beginning of your business to be like, well, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I don't know how to create an offer. I don't know what I should be charging. I don't know how to market this thing. I don't know anything about selling. So let me go buy all of these courses to teach me how to do all these things. And like that's great if that course is in alignment with how you want to run your business, but it's not going to be helpful if it's giving you a strategy that doesn't feel good for you or that isn't aligned with you and your business and how you want to be showing up. It's not going to work for you, right? And it's just such an easy cycle to get kind of trapped into again and again, not just in the beginning of your business, right? So I that's why having that trust in yourself is huge, so that you stop looking outside of you for the answers, because you already have the answers. You already know what to do. We just tell ourselves that we don't.
Yes, and then we buy all the courses out of fear, and then we spend years living in that fear and paying off the master's degree and
Yeah.
and then the courses on top of it because we decided that wasn't for us.
Yeah, and like I'm not anti courses or anti coaching obviously, but there's just such a difference between hiring a coach or investing in a course from that place of alignment versus
Mhm.
from a place of fear and like I can't trust myself or I can't do it on my own and I need somebody else to tell me what to do, is a very different energy than like I really feel drawn to work with this coach and I feel like they're going to really help me to reach my next level.
Yeah. Yes. I finally purchased my first coaching session or whatever coaching package with somebody in the last month, that it was
Yeah.
not like there was, my whole body was like, yes, please, instead of
Mm-hmm.
all the
Yeah.
resistance. And I think that that's really important, is that self-trust is like, okay, I can say no and I can still be successful. I can say yes and still be
Yeah.
successful. It's got to be what's in your body and aligned. I
Mm.
love this conversation. I'm like, it's all about being aligned. If it feels good, let it
Yeah.
go.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So you mentioned your podcast, but where else can people find you?
So I mostly hang out on Instagram, also on TikTok lately, and my handle on both of those is at Lindsay M. Hanson. My podcast, Quit Your Job Sis, you can find anywhere, and my website is just my name, lindsayhanson.com.
And I'll make sure to get all that information in the show notes, because I love that you are inspiring people to take aligned action and to really take that moment to step back and be like, should I be doing this? Or do I
Mm-hmm.
want to be doing this? I think that is something that I'm just going to say it because we're all women, female entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast, is when we step into that feminine flow, it really
Yeah.
becomes a flow. And that's
Yeah.
going to make a huge impact on the world.
Yeah. I fully believe that. I think we're all here for a reason, and there's something like it's not an accident that you feel called to do something, like it's not just random. I think there's a reason why you feel called to do something. And I just think we hold ourselves back so much because we don't have that trust, and we have all this self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and the fears, and everyone else around us telling us, well, are you sure you want to do that? Or maybe this strategy will work for you. It really worked for me. Or maybe that's a little bit risky. And that's where we kind of chip away at that trust we have within ourselves. And really, it's just preventing you from this thing that you're capable of, because you wouldn't have a desire to do it if you were not capable of doing it. Right. But we just get so in our head. And I think we're really meant to be in our body. Like you said, you can feel, right? For me, it feels like kind of in my gut, like I know when something is a full body yes, or when it's not. And I think learning to listen to literally your body will teach you so much about being able to trust that part of yourself, and those intuitive pulls that you're getting, because you already know what you want and you already know what to do. um but we just tell ourselves all these stories about why it can't be that easy.
Yeah. But you really do, like, having that sounding board that you were talking about with somebody,
Yeah.
whether that's a coach or a friend, is so helpful, because our mind messes with us so
Oh
much.
yeah. You should see my journals from the past 3 years. It has been a journey.
But you also are adding in that evidence. I call those my evidence files. When I'm having a
Oh,
really
I
bad
know.
day, I pull out my old evidence files
Hmm.
like, look, I did this. Yes, I did. I could do it again. Watch me.
Yeah.
I can
No,
do it better.
it's so good to have. I think the other thing too, being women, is you know we we're all in this society that I think uh, doesn't really emphasize how literally our bodies work, right? Like we're put into this kind of 9 to 5 box where it's like you're supposed to be productive from 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. That's literally not how we're designed. Like throughout our cycle, throughout the month, we have different levels of energy, and our hormones get out of whack. And like some days of the month, you just don't feel as great as other days. It's just is how our bodies are designed, right? And I think we can be really hard on ourselves for that and feel like, oh, I was feeling amazing last week and now I'm really doubting myself. Like, and we kind of can even just get in our head about that and be like, well, I shouldn't be feeling this way.
Right?
And it's like, well, it's not, it might just be your hormones. Like it might just be because you're on your period this week and you're just not going to feel that great. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong. It doesn't mean you have to change anything. It doesn't mean that you are fucking anything up. It's just like, just take the day off. Like your hormones are just out of whack and you're tired and your body has a lot going on. So just like take a day and you'll feel better tomorrow.
Right. And I think playing to that is we also have these moments of fire that I don't think that any other human,
Yeah,
we get this extra added fire
yeah.
for part of our
I
cycle. And you're just like,
definitely
boom, I'm
notice
here.
it.
Haha.
Yeah. No, I definitely noticed that like the in the first phase of my cycle, the first week or two, it's like very high energy, very much kind of in that flow and just like high vibe, feeling it. Things are going well. And then it's like that week of my period and maybe a little bit a few days before, I'm just like doubting everything I've ever done with my life. And it's
Yeah.
just it's crazy to like see how different you can feel when nothing in your life has actually changed other than the phase of your cycle that you're in, right?
Yeah.
And so being aware of that too, because now when I feel like, oh, why am I really doubting myself today? And then I'm like, oh, I start my period tomorrow, like nothing has actually gone wrong. I'm just gonna be really in my head today, but like I know that these thoughts are not real and I don't have to listen to them. It's just like my hormones, you know?
Yeah. So it's going back to checking in with your body.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
And that's the great way, like you're helping people get out of these 9 to 5s because we are meant to be in this more feminine flow. And I think that's absolutely beautiful what you're helping women with.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. And some women thrive in a 9 to 5, and like that's amazing. I just cannot relate. Like I was exhausted all the time. I am not meant to be working 9 to 5 every day, especially in an office. Like I was tired all the time. And I think that's something else too, that like we get so used to that, that we can sometimes not even realize how tired we are. Like until I quit my job, and I've heard so many people say the same thing who have left the corporate world, like until you were out of that environment, you don't realize how exhausted you are physically and mentally all the time and how not normal that is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate
Yeah.
100%. I'm like, oh, that's a whole new level of tired. I don't think I ever want to go back to that.
No, and now if I have a day where like I didn't get enough sleep or something and I'm just like tired, I notice it so much and I'm just like, this is how I used to feel every day. Like, what was I doing?
Yeah. Well, you made the shift out so much quicker. I took 18 years to figure it out. So I'm glad that you
Girl,
made the
I
shift.
did. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even last 2 years. I don't know how you did that.
By the skin of my teeth. I'm just like, yeah, that took all of my might to make it happen. But I'm glad that, you leaned in, you got out, now you're supporting other people getting out. And I just that it really is going to change the world and be part of the tsunami impact that the self-love impact that I wish for the world.
Yeah, I agree. And I just really appreciate the platform you've created and your message and everything that you're doing too.
So if someone were to walk away with like that one like mic drop moment, I'm out, what would you want them to walk away with?
Mm, I would say what the world needs most is for you to be you, not some watered down version of you, but your full, authentic self. And I think a lot of times we discount the power that we hold just by being in alignment with who we are. And sometimes it can be scary to let people see who we really are. But there's so much power that you have in, like I said, you're not here by accident. You were designed exactly the way that you are for a reason. And that reason is because there's some impact that you're meant to make on the world. And the only way you're going to get there is by following those intuitive pulls that you feel. So